social media has had an emotional, maybe cognitive atrophy to society in some way, shape, or form. But my big fear is that artificial intelligence will have more of a cognitive atrophy. And like most of our demographic would focus on physical fitness, I think you need to focus on cognitive fitness as well. There's a reason why friction is such an important part of training in so many different ways. You need to do hard things. You need to have friction in life so that you build up the resilience downstream for the things that will matter.
Richard, what's up, man? So good to have you on the podcast. We're going to talk about some important issues that I think a lot of men don't actually really consider.
Well, I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, man. It's interesting in the digital realm, which is kind of what we're going to address today. How often we're on these little devices. I mean, I got my phone right here. I'm on a computer. I've got electronics and digital stuff all around me all the time. But we don't think about how often these tools, based on what I've seen you talk about in your work, how often these tools are just being used as, I don't know what you'd call manipulation machines. I don't know what you call them, but it's pretty scary, actually, considering all that can take place on these little devices that we think are harmless.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great way of starting off, because I think that we probably have overlapping demographics and mutual friends and our communities and everything where, you know, it's not taking away from people prioritizing physical fitness or, you know, proficiency in firearms or survival situations and stuff like that. But I think that the cognitive and the mental aspect of manipulation and or warfare gets overlooked a lot because most people think, well, you know, I'm the exception to the rule. I can't be manipulated, you know. And the problem in that logic is that, you know, there's quite literally industries that have been built on, you know, machine learning that has had, you know, 20, 30, 40 years to refine its systems and become multi-billion-dollar, if not trillion-dollar enterprises with the sole purpose of manipulating you in some capacity. And, you know, some people might be like, well, you know, I get it politically and all these other different things that, you know, there's the ideological polarities and stuff like that, that you get sucked into these conversations. And we can go into more about that. But to distill it down, you have to think about what's going on in this situation. You have a corporation with a customer. The corporations would be your Metas, your Alphabets, Googles, YouTube, whoever, and the customer would be the advertisers. And the product that they're selling is actually your attention. And people hear the attention economy and all these other different things. And I feel like it gets used so often, the terms AI, algorithm, all these different things, that it kind of loses the meaning of what it's really like, the implications are. And when you are the product, and you're not paying for it, you are the product in this situation. The thing that they're trading is your watch time on video, watch time on platform, and how do they keep you in that system? Well, they've refined these systems over a period of time to figure out what maximizes that. And unfortunately, I would argue that it's an unhealthy mental state is what keeps you there. You could go as far back as, you know, us being on the savannah and hearing the twig snap, you know, in the grasses. That's a negativity bias tendency going on in the background. The threat is a greater response mechanism for you than just something that's like, oh, good news today, right? You know, these negativity bias tendencies keep you on the platform longer.
I mean, I know I could, like, if I were to put I put a positive, encouraging post about I was traveling and how, you know, people are generally good and decent to each other. And, you know, I get good engagement and good feedback, but I could say the same, I could take the same image, the same scenario, I'm traveling, and I could talk about the guy that I almost got into a fight with on a plane or something, or somebody had to be dragged off the plane, or, you know, some negative event that could have happened, which didn't, by the way. And that would do infinitely better than the positive posts that I put out, which is discouraging because the real world isn't like that in my experience.
No, and that's exactly my logic in a lot of the companies that I've been working on building over the last few years in the AI space and trying to drive the value of posting to social media in so many different ways to zero by creating so much noise. The term's been kind of coined over the last few years as slop, but I've been doing it for about 5 years. And my rationale behind it is that, for the greater part of 20 years or so, probably since MySpace, at best you're seeing a highlight reel of a person's life, the most sensational aspect of it. The couple going on the exotic vacation or whatever it is, or the things that are hyper sensationalized and sensual, whatever it is, anger inducing, and the unfortunate aspect to that is you get into these states and you don't even realize that you're losing your most precious commodity, which is time. And it's fine. Like I get it. A lot of people don't want to pay for platforms and stuff like that. But at some point you have to assess these systems and processes and whether or not it's well, for me, what I did was, I guess I could go on a rant here, but it kind of hit me as I was transitioning in one of my roles in one of my companies into another. And I was like, okay, now what do I do? And in a very fortunate situation in trying to figure out what the next thing was, I started doing these thought exercises as to, the person I'm trying to please is myself probably 20, 30, 40 years from now. And again, not to unpack too many things psychologically, but I never knew my father. So I found that I was always a hyper performer in life in any career that I had because I was always trying to please management or whoever the superior was. So I was always 110% giving it everything that I had. So I doubt you would ever meet an employer that said I wasn't one of the best employees they ever had. But it becomes unhealthy at some point. And then when you start getting introspective and looking at your life and how, I'm older now, not in my 20s. I would definitely encourage guys in their 20s to hustle. I burned it at both ends, working 7-8 jobs at a time. But now as I get later on in life, I have to figure out and prioritize those things that mean a lot to me and do the work. And unfortunately,
it is interesting when you you have to consider too, even when your phone pulls it up and says you've spent 6 hours and 17 minutes on your phone today. It's like, man, what could you have done with that time that you just lost to doom scrolling, getting mad, arguing with idiots, and putting information into your brain that's only going to create toxicity throughout your day?
Yeah, that's actually exactly where I was going. So that's pretty much the first chapter in so many different ways. Well, maybe the second is insight, because as with any situation, you're going to want to have some kind of data point in this to try to keep you honest and objective about what's going on, right? In no way, shape, or form am I passing judgment on anyone in any capacity. You could be a social media influencer. You may need to do things for work. It's not passing judgment in any way, shape, or form, but I think a lot of people don't have that insight. So if you have the ability to turn screen time on, whatever iOS or Android device that you have, let that run in the background for about a month, and then start holding that up, extrapolate that, not just over a day, but what I did was over a lifetime, right? So if I quantify how much I'm looking at it in the span of a day or a week, and then I can multiply that times 52 weeks times, let's say I got 60 more years of life, hopefully, then that ends up being like, oh shit, I'm gonna end up spending 1.6 years on Instagram. Right. Do I really care about that? Or when I'm 90 years old on my deathbed, will I wish that I spent more time with my dogs? And that's kind of the thing that hit me the hardest, like friends, family, my dogs, the things that I care about. When you're on your deathbed, and I include some different meditation exercises in that, and one of them is a deathbed thought exercise. Who's in the room with you? What's the temperature? All these different things that ground you in that moment so that hopefully you can go back and assess the things that really are of value to you in life. Because if you don't have insight going on, you don't do the work and the things that are important to you, you don't have the foundation to really start shoring up your vulnerabilities cognitively and mentally, because you don't even have the framework for boundaries at that point.
Right.
So there's
yeah. It is interesting how little we put forth that effort. You know, I talk with guys about this all the time when it comes to, their finances or their fitness. And it's like, with their money, like when's the last time you actually pulled up your bank account and looked to see where your expenses were going? I actually pulled up my business bank account today, and I noticed that there was 2 subscriptions that I have not used for 6 months, 8 months, a year, that I had just forgot about and I let go on. But we don't inventory, we don't audit like that. And I wish that we did audit more, because I think we'd find a lot of leakage in the way that we're spending our time, money, and energy.
Don't get me started on software as a service and all these subscriptions and everything, because that's what they bank on, is you forgetting about that. Because unfortunately, life is hectic. There's a lot going on, especially if you're a working class person. You don't have time to dive into the nuance of things on a daily basis, that, and it adds up. Ounces equal pounds. And so I'm sure that a lot of us have subscriptions. Like, it just gets me really frustrated when your mattress has a subscription service for it to
like,
operate.
What could you possibly need that for? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, don't get me wrong. Sleep is one of the most underrated cognitive tools out there. Improving that in so many different ways improves your quality of life. But
but there's a cost of everything. And that, I think that's what people don't understand is, so you might say, well, I bought this 8 sleep mattress or whatever, and it cost you $5,000. I don't know what the number is, but they're expensive.
Yeah, that's about right.
And so you buy this 8 sleep mattress, and you're like, well, I'm getting better sleep. I'm like, yeah, and you paid $5,000 for it, and it's going to break. And I don't know if they require a subscription, or I haven't really looked into it. They do. But yeah.
It's a monthly subscription.
Okay, you're sleeping better, but is it that much better that you're going to pay $100 a month or whatever it equals that could have been spent on something maybe more useful, maybe more beneficial?
Yeah,
for you?
and again, not passing judgment if you do find that, decide. But it's just. But that's exactly it. I think too many people are caught up in the, just wherever the wind blows. Unfortunately, life is busy, and how do you shore up some of these vulnerabilities? I mean, you look at information. It is, again, another rant here, but you look at how information's been optimized since the printing press, even back before that, spoken and written language. It's gotten easier and easier to communicate at scale. And then you get the television, or you get radio, then television, then the internet. Now we have inundation of communication in so many different ways. It's hard to parse the noise to find the signal in so many different ways. And you add even more layers of optimization to that, like your Amazon one-clicks and stuff like that, where it just becomes so easy to just say yes in these cycles. And unfortunately, I feel like you start looking at the writing on the walls with artificial intelligence systems. I feel like you could argue that social media has had an emotional, maybe cognitive atrophy to society in some way, shape, or form. But my big fear is that artificial intelligence will have more of a cognitive atrophy. And like most of our demographic would focus on physical fitness, I think you need to focus on cognitive fitness as well. There's a reason why friction is such an important part of training in so many different ways. You need to do hard things. You need to have friction in life so that you build up the resilience downstream for the things that will matter.
Well, yeah, I mean, thinking just builds that muscle that is your brain, right? And the other thing that I thought about with AI, and this is, I think, partly what you're talking about with regards to cognitive atrophy is the term you used, is just creativity. If I need to be creative, for example, about, I don't know, a podcast or a course I'm writing, I could just go into ChatGPT and have them plug something out and be done with it, not have to think. But I did not have any benefit of being creative or any benefit of feedback on what my audience wants or doesn't want. And I like the idea. Cognitive atrophy. I think that makes total sense. Unfortunately, you're right.
There's a few exercises that I put in the book as an example, and again, there's no right or wrong way. Hopefully, people can figure out different little tools or exercises to help them through these processes. But once you go through the insight and the kind of defining, establishing these rules and boundaries, you're going to have to go through a detox phase, and very much like a junkie. You're going to find that as you introduce friction in various areas, you're going to go through withdrawal. And it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be comfortable, to say the least. And just kind of some of these very simple exercises, I'm like, just leave your phone at home to go to the grocery store. And you've been there 1,000,001 times. You don't need Google Maps or Waze to get there. You're going to make it. I promise you'll figure it out. And, if you get a flat tire or something like that, it's going to be an adventure. Hopefully you know how to change a tire. If not, flag somebody down. Like, life will be fine if you're gone to the grocery store for 30 minutes or an hour and you don't have your phone on you. But notice the withdrawal that happens when you're separated from the device. And all of that's because there's a neurochemical dependency on this thing that's with you all the time. And it's unfortunate, but there's more like kind of thorough exercises that you can do too, but that's just one of them. And even on the way to the grocery store, just take inventory of how many people are on their phone. Like not just texting or whatever, or not with the phone just up talking, but actually texting and stuff like that. It used to be that you used to get tickets and stuff like that at red lights from traffic cops, like looking at people texting on their phone. And it seems like they've just given up on it because everybody is doing it. Yeah.
Well, even today when I was at the airport, and look, I was guilty of it too, but I looked up from my phone for a second. I looked around and nobody's talking to each other. Nobody's conversing. Everybody's buried in their and I was too. I'm not pointing fingers. I was too, but I was like, this is interesting. This is not a development for the human species.
Well, my hope is, and I have to be optimistic about these things, is my hope is that we've reached a saturation point in so many different ways where Gen Z is showing signs of being a little bit more counterculture to their millennial parents, probably. That you can say that they were, interested less in alcohol and all these other different things, but also less phone usage. Hopefully this stems to more in-person stuff, because I feel like there's a community, like all of these are different chapters. Like community is such a huge component to the lived experience and happiness. And I feel like we've never been so connected in human history with digital devices, but we've never been more alone through isolation. And that's another reason why I build some of these companies in the artificial intelligence spaces, because I want to create so much noise that like people are just frustrated. I don't know if you've ever heard of dead internet theory or not, but the point in which the theory is that more artificial communication is being generated than human communication on the internet between people, be it comments and chats and stuff like that. And hopefully we get to the point where I love seeing it on social media now, where everyone thinks everything's AI. And like that just makes me feel good inside, because it means that people are starting to realize that social media, and I guess this is where I was going before, but like at best, in the past, social media was a sensationalized version of somebody's reality. At worst, it was completely fabricated. It was face-tuned or photoshopped. It would like they were in a fake airplane set or something, not really on a jet or whatever. Right. And it creates these situations where other people may feel less than, or they're FOMOing or whatever it is, and it's like, no, those aren't even real people doing real things. And now it's like AI. Hopefully everything is fake, and people start like, I think everybody thinks it is.
That's the default. Like I wrote a post on Instagram just the other day, and somebody had commented, that caption's AI generated. I'm like, what makes you say that? And they're like, oh, just because there's paragraphs and hyphens. I'm like, well, those are actually rhetorical tools to make it easier for a person to read it. Like human beings can do that. And in this case, I was the human being who wrote it. But it was just interesting that they went straight to that, because there was spaces in my paragraphs and hyphens in my sentences where appropriate. But I think it illustrates exactly what you're saying. The default now is I don't believe it, which I don't blame people for thinking that way.
Well, hopefully it leads to people spending less time on those things like maybe Instagram and maybe more time like on podcasts where, then, media will evolve and they'll find ways to, suck people in with artificial systems or whatever so that they can maximize, the desired outcome, so that they can monetize it. But, my hope is that people are going to start gravitating towards real people, authentic experiences, because again, at the end of the day, the digital versions are way less valuable and less meaningful than the in real life kind of versions of it. One of the things they even touch on is the pornography component to it. And again, it's not to pass judgment on anyone in any way, shape, or form, but using it as an example, it's like you're shortcutting an entire process, right? So if you go from A to Z without risking, getting turned down or rejected at the bar or the library, wherever it is, you're going to have a lot of shots on goal and rejections before somebody takes you up on a date. And then you have to go on a date and then maybe date for a while, get married, whatever the thing is, until you get to the point of actually having sex and then the orgasm or whatever. And so when that happens, all those friction points lead to a more resilient oxytocin, neurochemical, biological response. Whereas if you shortcut all of that stuff, you're going straight to dopamine and the reward mechanism in that. So you could say that with fitness. There's so many different great physiological analogies in that where it requires you to do the hard things so that the payoff at the end, the delayed gratification, is more valuable to you.
Well, I just had a really good conversation with Ian Wendt. He's a good friend of mine. He was in Rexburg. I told you I was up there. And he asked me an interesting question. He said, what is the root of all evil? And normally when people hear that, you always hear money is the root of all evil, like things like that. But I said, no, let me think about that. I never really thought about that question. And I said, it's probably greed, I would say. Maybe greed and envy is the root of all evil. And he said, you know what I think it is? I think it's expediency. And I said, tell me what you mean by that. He's like, everybody's trying to shortcut everything and we'll do anything in order to get it. We'll make up lies. We'll make up fabrications. We'll justify poor behavior just so we can have the result without the effort. And it was a really interesting take. And I think it aligns with what you're saying is that when you shortcut sexual gratification, for example, which is what you were just talking about, yeah, sure, you can get off immediately without having to do literally any work at all. But how does that connect you to a human being? How does that help you learn how to be somebody who can, sell themselves and market themselves, I guess, in a way, or charm other people or have some sort of pro-social behavior development? It doesn't. So you're missing out on all the benefit of the hardship of, in this case, getting laid, or it could be building muscle, or it could be building a business. You're missing out on those opportunities.
Yeah, the Stanford Marshmallow study has been cited so many times in that far as like the delayed gratification component to it. Just for people who aren't familiar with it, distilled down, they would take a group of children and they would they'd give them a marshmallow and they would say, we're going to leave the room, we're going to come back in 15 minutes. You can eat the marshmallow if you want, but if you don't eat the marshmallow, we'll give you 2 marshmallows. And then, so throughout the experiment, there were, different kids that exercised restraint and got the second marshmallow. And then some of them, sitting on their hands and trying all these different things, their impulse control got the better of them and they just ate it. And they followed the kids later on in life. And for the most part, the ones that were able to delay gratification were more successful in so many different ways and showing that impulse control and everything. And you talk about greed and all these other different things. I believe exactly what he was saying too. You look at lottery winners are a great example, right? An entrepreneur or someone who may have to grind for 10 or 15 years to earn we'll say a fortune or something like that, is one thing, and they'll understand the pitfalls and the things that come along with, you know, the lawsuits, the people who are inauthentic in, you know, their behavior and stuff like that, trying to mooch stuff off of you. They'll know all the different nuances to having that type of money. But you look at lottery winners, and statistically speaking, they don't fare well after winning the lottery. You know,
Sometimes
they don't hold on to
much
it.
worse.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. And so I think there is something to be said. You know, we're talking about a mental aspect where you're building up resilience over a period of time with that friction. But there's all these other instances where, you know, like physiological, be it like working out, or in those situations with finances and stuff like that. So I think there are parallels for sure.
Yeah. Well, to get back to the concept of this, you know, you were talking about, I don't know if you use the term digital detox. I'm sure you're familiar with Cal Newport's work, like Deep Work, and he's written some other books that I can't remember right offhand, but he's got some incredible thoughts on emails. And I don't even think he has social media presence, and he'll go off grid for a while. Yeah. Oh, he does?
Well, yeah.
Let's hear what we got.
So he has a YouTube. And so, yeah, I'm laughing because and don't take this the wrong way. I absolutely love his work. I think he's doing fantastic stuff. The irony in his work is that he has to play the game, whether or not he has a social media manager or not. So like the problem I had in like the researching for this and like going through, you know, people like Dr. Anna Lemke's work, which is, you know, different from Cal Newport's, but Cal has so much social media, like YouTube videos and stuff. I'm like, dude, like the irony is I have to parse so much noise. You're having to feed the beast and post every single day, every single few days, and you talk for like an hour. I don't have time to go through all of this stuff, right? Like I need the signal out of this because I don't have the time to spend like it. I mean, I don't know how many videos he has on his YouTube channel, but I'm sure it's in hundreds of videos. And so like the average person trying to find the value in that has to parse all of that. That's honestly, that's one of my hopes for AI in so many ways, is being able to distill things down. Because right now, content creators are having to optimize for watch time on video and watch time on platform. Otherwise, their content's not going to get served up. So the irony in his stuff is like deep work and focus, but like, to go through all of his content is going to require you spending a lot of time on his YouTube channel. I can see that.
I think the counter argument to that, and you know, Cal obviously would have his logic behind it, but I think the counter argument is what you said earlier, is just being intentional. You know, it's like, think about how many podcasts there are, and millions probably. And so are you going to listen to all of them? No, you're probably going to listen to 5, 3 to 5 on average is what I find. Same thing with YouTube. There's millions and millions of channels. So what do you listen to? You probably listen to a handful of channels, and that's it. And I think what we do is we just get stuck in these little rat holes, because the same structures and systems that are being used to keep your eyeballs on YouTube are the same structures and systems that were used to keep people gambling in Las Vegas. You know, I live 2 hours from Las Vegas, and I'll go down there and I'll see people pumping money, not even money anymore, which is the one-click thing from Amazon you're talking about. Make it really easy, so it's not even money. They don't have to feel the pain of pulling out their wallet anymore. But yeah, it's addictive behavior. It's designed to do that. It wants you to scroll to the next thing and the next thing. And here's how you know, I think. You tell me what you think on this. Here's how you know if you've fallen prey to it. If you start to say, well, I'm going to look at 10 more posts, or I'm going to go until 9 o'clock and then I'm going to stop. And then all of a sudden you went through 100 more posts, or now it's 9:30. You know that it did something to you, manipulated you, like you said, without even you acknowledging or realizing what happened.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. There's a number of different ways to do it too. Like one of the ones that was really valuable for me, that I give it as an example, is have you ever closed an application only to reopen it? which one was it? You know, and I know some people will be like, no, I've never done. I don't know. I think a lot of, and those are compulsive signals, right? Like if you close it out and immediately reopen it. The other thing is if you have iOS, you can look in your screen time. There's a data point called first pickups. That is very insightful. In the back of the book, I actually give people a 30-day journal as well to fill out. And I want people to log their first pickups because I found that extremely valuable to me. And if you find that you're picking something up, multiple times a day, you're getting 100 notifications from it and everything, you really need to ask yourself, do I need to remove this from my phone? Or do I need to log out and then log back in to be able to use it? How can you introduce these?
Is what that's doing is if like my screen goes blank or shuts off for sleep mode, it's whatever I come to initially when it wakes back up. Is that what that's measuring?
That's
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I mean, some people, it may be messages. And that's extremely popular form of communication. But if you find that it's a social media application in any capacity, I have to wonder what's going on there as far as the hook.
Yeah. I've turned off all notifications. I don't get notifications on my phone for any app. My phone is always on silent. I don't get message alerts. I think I get buzzed for messages, but nothing else. But I've tried to limit that as much as I can. I don't sync it to my watch anymore, my notifications to my watch, because I don't want to be looking at my watch every 3 seconds, especially when I'm sitting there talking to somebody and I'm like glancing at my watch every 5 seconds. How rude. So yeah,
that's why I got rid of my Apple Watch.
Yeah.
I got a Garmin too, like with a red face on it because I found the red flashlight really handy. And it's funny you say that about the notifications because again, I'm a hypocrite. Like we all have reasons why we do certain things. It's just being intentional with it. I think if you take anything away, it's understanding why you do certain things. But I'll give you an example. I did turn on notifications here recently. I had a coyote kill 18 of my chickens, and it's so frustrating. So I ended up on my cameras around the property, I ended up turning on no notifications. So the last 2 weeks, I've had the worst sleep because I get up walking like 2:00 in the morning barefoot in the woods with like a thermal looking for this coyote.
Oh my God. Where do you live?
Yeah. I'm in Texas right now. Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say that sounds like a fun couple of nights of getting out there and getting after it to me, but
yeah, it's interesting because you have to during the winter months, way easier to walk around barefoot because it's been a progression for me. I know this is a rant, but I used to wear boots and everything, but I found that I would make too much noise snapping twigs and stepping on crunchy leaves and stuff. And then I ended up going to these kind of like wool socks, and they're way quieter, but now I'm just like barefoot. So when it gets summer months in Texas, you got rattlesnakes and scorpions and all these other different things. It's just not as conducive to being barefoot. Fire ants.
Oh man. Okay. So I think a lot of people talk, I mean, we all know, right? I think everybody, that's the trick here is that everybody listening already knows they're on their phone too much. Like they already know they're doing these things too much. But what about other technology, digital technology? Like TV's one a lot of people don't think about. I talk with guys that'll sit on the couch for 6 hours on a Saturday and watch college football, or they'll binge watch, Yellowstone, or even my kids are like into Stranger Things. And so they'll binge watch that. I'm like, all right, guys, like enough is enough on this. Are there other mediums that we don't often think about outside of just our phones and our computers?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's something I have to address in there too. In the detox phase is that, you have to look at this as an addiction. That's why I say, look at when you go to the grocery store and these other different things, notice the withdrawal symptoms, because most people are going to be like, I don't have a problem. I can go without but what generally happens, and I even did this myself, I found that as soon as I started deleting some of these apps in my detox phase, I started substituting that behavior, that compulsive behavior, with different things like the weather app. Like man, I could tell you the difference between the HRRR model, the European model, like all these other different things, right? And so you have to be super careful. Yeah, because you're just substituting one thing for another. And if you do have a compulsive behavior around these things, it's not to say that you can't substitute it. Like, again, one of the stereotypes might be somebody who goes sober, finds fitness, and maybe they have an unhealthy relationship with exercise in some capacity, right? And it's like, okay, well, how do you define what's unhealthy in that sense? That's why the work is so important here in figuring out the things that that are of value to you, because at the end of the day, an addiction is really when you're doing something that has a trade-off that isn't aligned with your values in that sense, right? Because if you do have a compulsion towards something that may make your life better and it may be aligned in your values, then I don't see it as a problem, right? So you just have to be cognizant of what's happening and where you're substituting that behavior for, because as you go through a detox phase, you will gravitate towards latching on to something else.
I like that you're saying that, because I think a lot of the times when we're trying to improve ourselves as men, we often just think, well, I'm going to stop doing that, stop doing that, stop doing that, and stop doing that, and then my life will be better. It's like, no, you can stop that behavior for sure, especially if you have accountability systems, you have other men in your corner, you have structures and processes for quitting, and you can definitely do that. But I think you're going to choose the path of least resistance that's going to fill that dopamine desire, right? Because you're benefiting from getting on your phone, and there's something that's happening physiologically that you're benefiting from. And if you're not getting that, you've got to get it somewhere else. And it's like drinking or drug use. The more you do it, the more you need to get the same level of high that you previously had. So what would you say are healthy replacements for digital activity?
Yeah. So let's unpack a few things that you said there. First things first, accountability is a component in, like, it's one of the chapters in there. And there are some pretty amazing statistics around accountability. And so, and again, these are very round numbers. So, I always take statistics with a grain of salt, but, and I cite all the studies on it. 50% of people who develop a plan for a goal find success. That's, you flip a coin.
50%,
like,
yeah.
So 65% of people who commit to someone. So like, say you and I have like a weekly thing. So for me, try not to do it digitally. It's better, again, if you have a in-person, tangible, relationship that you can lean on for this. But one of the things I did was every Saturday morning, I would post my screen time just to everyone so that they could see what I was consuming that week. It was kind of an accountability thing for me as well. And then 95% of the people, if they have a specific appointment, find that they're able to attain their goal that they set, which is wild.
Just putting
to
a
me.
date on it, putting a date on
That's
whatever
it.
you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Well, or you say every single week we're going to work on this, and then you eventually hit that goal. So I guess unpacking some more stuff which you have brought up there, the community component to it and the substitution. You look at things like Globo gyms, the churn rate. How many people quit the gym after their New Year's resolution? It's crazy high. Sure. I think there's even like a pizza holiday in January where it's statistically the day that people quit. So like all these like pizza places run sales and stuff like that. It's like a pizza
Are you serious? I never heard of that.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Because it's the day that everyone quits and gives up on their New Year's resolutions.
Yeah, it's probably like January 21st or something. I'd have to look it up.
But you look at Globo gyms and stuff, and the churn rate, people who quit over a short period of time, and versus a CrossFit or an Orange Theory, where it's very community driven, where you have people in the class that you see on a regular basis. You're not if you go to an Orange Theory or a CrossFit, you can't wear headphones because of the movements and everything. So you're listening to the coach. So you're present with everybody in that group. Whereas if you go to a Globo gym, I'm not passing judgment. I did it too. Whenever I would go to 24-hour fitness or whatever, I'd have my headphones in. I'd be listening to my music and everything. But what if, you went into the gym and you were actually present for other people? Now, everybody else might have their headphones in. But these opportunities for, community present themselves, and that makes you actually I'll go on a rail here as far as like the community side of things. Gratitude's like the very last chapter for me, but that was like one of the biggest needle movers for me. But like community is so important, and realizing that you're part of something bigger is so important for, I don't know, feeling valued in the human experience. And so whenever I would do my gratitude exercises and stuff, like I would get inside my truck and I would take 2 to 3 minutes. And whenever I do gratitude exercises, I wanted to make sure it was intermittent or inconvenient. In some capacity. It wasn't a completely scheduled ritual like praying before a meal, right? Which you can still do, but it needed to be something that I wouldn't get into a very habitual way of doing it where it kind of lost its meaning. And I'd just be like, hey man, I am universe, God, whoever. I am grateful that I have reliable transportation. I have fuel. I have a job that provides me for enough income that I can pay for reliable transportation and fuel. I get to go to this location wherever it is, if it's for dinner, if it's for work or whatever. I'm just truly grateful. And what happened was, as I was commuting to different places, I would find that instead of getting road rage and traffic in construction zones and stuff like that, my thought processes started to shift. I was like, this dude is working on a road in my community. He has a job. He's probably got kids and a family at home. This dude gets to provide for his family, and he's making my community better. It was really weird how my perception on things started changing to a more positive spin. And you could say that about almost all aspects of digital experiences, putting you against us versus them, and you're kind of in a constant state of fight or flight, us versus them, and then you're seeing a lot of thems out, and you're just kind of always on edge and stuff. So, there's a number of different, I know I'm going on a rant here, but there's a number of different things that I found extremely helpful in that process.
That I've never really considered the level of empathy that you were talking about that gratitude would bring. I mean, I'm sure I've experienced it, but I never made that connection that when you're grateful for the things, you don't see it so negatively, like that road worker that's bothering you because he's filling the pothole that you complained about all last year, and now you're bothering that somebody's filling it up. It's like, So that's really interesting. The other thing that I've noticed about having gratitude in my life is that I'm so much more present and open to opportunities that I didn't see before. As I started to be gracious and have gratitude for the things in my life, I started noticing opportunities for relationships, opportunities for conversations, opportunities for business partnerships, opportunities to make more money, or opportunities to get more fit or whatever, just because I was in a completely different mind space than everything's horrible, everything's out to get me, and if I didn't have bad luck, I wouldn't have any luck at all.
Yeah. Do you have any specific examples where you've like that just has it always been kind of at the front of like your mind here lately as you kind of shifted into that? Was there any, because the traffic thing was kind of my example, but like quite literally gratitude was the biggest needle mover for me. I mean, some people friction might be the biggest needle mover for them, but I feel like I want to be an optimist, but I've most of my life have been a pessimist in so many different ways. I mean, it's because easy. I'm a refiner.
And it is easy. I mean, I think most men are like that to varying degrees, where we're looking for problems because ultimately at the root of who we are, we want to fix them. You said refine, fix, whatever you want to use. But even just this last trip that I was on with Ian, he's been a friend for a while. I've never met him in person. We sat down. I've been very grateful for him, and I have a positive outlook on life. And because I have a positive outlook on life, I asked him questions about what's he doing in business? How is he growing his business? How is he reaching people? And man, some of the wisdom that he imparted me over lunch, We sat down for lunch before we did the podcast. It was invaluable. Like people would pay tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to have a coach tell somebody what he told me over a bite to eat because of gratitude, because I'm optimistic. He's optimistic. We synced up. I flew out there. The other thing you could think is like, okay, so I spent, I don't know, $1,000 on a ticket, a couple $100 for the Airbnb, a little bit of food here and there. I was out of work for a couple of days. And so you could look at it and say, well, that sucked. Like I spent all that money, I spent all that time, and I could have been doing, or you could say, well, no, I had the money in the bank. I had the money to pay and I made the most of it. And look what came of it. It's amazing when you start having that outlook like that.
Yeah, words matter so much too. Like I think it was Andy Stump that was I think he was the one who told me about this, was like framing up different things, and it was like, oh man, that's so awesome. Like, because we were talking about the gratitude kind of component to it, and he was like, yeah, you need to start saying I get to versus I have to. Or no, I think it was Judd. Yeah. Judd was the one who told me that. He's like, say I get to, not I have to. And I was like, oh man, there are so many things in my life that I can put two words in the front of the sentence, and it has such an amazing impact. I get to do this today versus I have to. And there's so many instances.
It's kind of like Jocko's good, right? This horrible thing happened to you. Good. And what did you learn from it? And how did you grow? And how did you get better? And what lesson did you learn? And if you look at it like that, it's still going to hurt. Nobody wants bad shit to happen to them, but you're going to get through it that much more effectively.
Yeah, no, that's just a great way of like living in general. I think that at the end of the day, you look at, man, so many people I've found they're so beat up by things happening in the world, but then you get into the world of social media, and so many people are frustrated and angry about things that they have zero control over. And it's like, if you take, and I've been fairly consistent about this, and like, I think I did a podcast 11 years ago with Coleon Noir. And I was like, how do we fix the firearms, issues and stuff like that people see around the various different statistics or whatever. It's like, it's easy. You focus on your family, and you make sure that like, all the parents that your kids are interacting with or whatever. You focus on your direct, your indirect family, then your community, and then you can start worrying about stuff on a state level. And if you're lucky, and you have the bandwidth and the capacity, then maybe the state or the federal or international level. But if you are living in a constant anger or fear of things that you have zero control over because this little digital thing is serving it up to you on a regular basis, it's like you're doing those people who could use your help in your life disservice by not giving them the attention or resources that you could be doing. And if everyone did that, again, the irony in that situation is collectively as a species, we'd probably be better off for it because we would build resilience.
It's the most minimal locus of control. And that's you. That's your attitude. It's your attitude towards whatever it is you might be dealing with. And then your kids start to see that, and your neighbors start to see that, and the relationships and other people start to see that. But what's interesting, to go back to your statement about being ironic, is that so many people want to skip the line and say, well, if I was in politics, or I was in this position, or if I led my company, I would do it right. No, you wouldn't. Like if I snapped my fingers right now and I said, you're now the boss, you're now the owner of the company. You were in the mailroom and now you're the owner. I just snapped my fingers. You would drive that business into the ground within a matter of probably weeks, if not sooner. Andy said this. Andy Frisilla said this to me one time, and I'll never forget it. And he wasn't being rude, but he was right. And he's like, Ryan, if I gave you control today of First Form, I just said, here you go. You're now the CEO. Get after it. He's like, you couldn't handle it. You would crumble. And he wasn't being rude. He was illustrating the point. We have to build ourselves up first and earn the right to be in those positions of authority and power and leadership and credibility. But too many people just think, well, if I had a bunch of money, if I was the boss, if I was in that, if I was in politics, if I was the president, if you were that, it'd be the same or worse than it is now. You have to go out and earn it.
Yeah, that's man, that's such a great point. I feel like that's in a lot of ways, again, the reason why a lot of these different AI things that I've been working on are so important to me is because so many people. I mean, if you have a business, everybody has 20/20 vision in hindsight. Everybody will come back to you with a solution to a problem, or let me rephrase that. Everybody will come back to you and tell you about a problem after the problem's been figured out, or at least known that there's one there. Very few people will come to you with a constructive criticism of it. And for me, I wish we could get past the point of everyone going, that's bad. It's like, okay, where's the constructive criticism here? Like how, I like fixing things. Like I like moving the ball forward. I don't want to dwell on, whatever this is that, and hear the same sob story over and over. Politics is another thing that I'm really like, I wish people would be looking at trying to figure out ways that we can start holding our elected officials accountable. Again, here we go again on another rant, but I've found that like everybody's frustrated, left and right. Everyone knows there's a uniparty. It's like Munger. One of my favorite quotes all times is "Show me the incentive, and I'll show you the outcome." And you look at things like politics where the incentive is just to get reelected. How do you get reelected? You need money to do so. If your constituents aren't giving you money, where are you going to get the money from? You're going to get it from industry. How are you going to get that money from industry if you don't scratch their back and everything? So it's like, okay, how do we shift this in some way, shape, or form? I don't know. Maybe we could get to the point where we have a discussion about like a super PAC or something that will support different candidates that put all their assets in a blind trust, right? And you have like a core list of values, like you will never vote to increase the national deficit. You'll only vote for things that balance the budget. You'll never vote to infringe on Second Amendment rights. Maybe if there's ever a vote on a digital rights or privacy amendment, you'll vote for that. Whatever it is, you list the few things that are kind of most people would say would be reasonable, and then you start filling out these different elected officials, and if ever they vote against you, you can liquidate their assets and just sell their house and all that other stuff or whatever. And the cool thing about
that's actually kind of interesting,
right? Because and that's where I've kind of shifted my perspective on things, where it's like, okay, the way that they've been trying to ban insider trading. I kind of misspoke on this the other day, but they frame everything as insider trading, so they don't want politicians trading. I actually think politicians trading is fine, but the point at which they're using, as the SEC would call it, non-material, non-public, or material non-public information, they are insider trading. Yeah, no, they should go to jail for that. But I think that we should have an incentive where if the elected officials are doing the things that are for their constituents' best interest, if you're a working class person in an area and your representatives always voting against you and what's good for you, I think that they should lose just as much as you lose. And I think that, if you've ever owned a business, I think that there should be upside for them too. I think that like, hey, look, let's balance the budget and do all these other different things. And if you guys do that, you get some kind of bonus or an incentive or whatever it is. Like incentivize these guys to win so that we all win. Not like, because right now it's like, how do you suck the most amount of money from the American taxpayer? And it's like we're just losing because of it. So I don't know. There's all these different things that I'm constantly trying to figure out solutions to, and I just wish that people would be more constructive with their criticisms and come to the table, willing to have conversations and be wrong and say, "Hey, look, you know what? Maybe that thought was stupid. Let me walk that back." Because now you can't even be wrong without being canceled for the rest of your life, and it's like, and nobody's perfect.
Well, and there's also and there's like the mass cancellation of apology to the mob. I'm like, don't do that. Like, that's not a real apology. If you actually injured somebody in some way, then apologize. But if somebody's offended over nothing, it's like, you don't need to apologize about that. But those are some interesting ideas. I don't know that I totally agree with all of the way that would work, but it's at least a fascinating thought exercise about being able to sell a congressman's house or liquidate his assets because he didn't do what he said he would do or uphold his campaign promises. That's kind of interesting, actually.
Because I feel like the inevitability is at some point, because the middle class is being decimated at this point. I think that if we don't figure out solutions to these things, we're heading to a conflict that the generations, well, actually, yeah, I would say the last 2-3 generations haven't even remotely to experience in any capacity. And I would try to prevent violence at all costs, but that's why I think that people need to be as constructive with their criticisms as possible now, because if everybody just point their finger saying something's wrong, it's like, was it Ray Dalio was saying, look, if we're going for a rock, we're on a ship and it's a barge and it's going straight for a rock. You have the camps that are on both sides saying A or B, A or B, A or B. The worst thing that we could do right now is be indecisive. And just sit on the sidelines and say, well, look, it's going to, A's a bad direction, B's a bad direction. We're going for a rock, right now. We need to figure this out. One. So if you're not going to be constructive, you need to shut up and figure it out.
Well, I think there's another concept that I've come across recently. My co-host Kip Sorensen, he helps me on our question and answer podcast every week. He has this phrase, and I might butcher it just a little bit, but he says group accountability undermines personal responsibility. And I think in a lot of ways, that's what's happened, where we have these elected officials and representatives, and we just expect that they're going to do what's in our best interest. And we're going to assume that the checks and balances are taken care of. And we're going to assume that other people are going to hold them accountability. And so therefore I have no responsibility to say something, to attend city council meetings, to attend school board meetings, to speak up and be vocal, to run for elected positions myself, because somebody else will always do it. And that's where group accountability undermines personal responsibility. So the answer is what? Personal responsibility. Handle your stuff.
Yeah. Well, and man, I resonate with that. I mean, that's I'm an individual rights absolutist in so many different ways. And that is, you have to have accountability with that responsibility. And you look at, we've, as a society, in so many different ways, we've leaned on the specialist for so long that the generalist has been weeded out. And it's very unfortunate. You have 3 seed companies control, the 90% of the seeds in the global supply. You have corporations like John Deere, which and they're not the only ones, but they don't allow you to work on your equipment and all these different things. There's so many different vulnerabilities. You look at the pandemic in so many different ways, people talking about how supply chains are so fragile. Yeah, I mean, because everyone's leaning on some very fragile, there's different sectors that have been meat production, perfect example, because I love agriculture, and there's so many different industries in which I'm trying to help out, agriculture being one of them. But we're losing resilience in our supply chain and our food supply in so many different ways because we've outsourced and we've leaned on these people to optimize for scale, be it Tyson or whatever. You have 4 major producers in the U.S. and they're able to take up and manipulate the prices for meat processors. And so that makes it that much more difficult for small farmers. And then you have regulation on top of it. You can't, if it crosses state lines, then you have USDA and all these other different things. It's like, no, we need to build up resilience as a society. You need diversity at a local level. So you need small farms. You need local mechanics. You need local grocery stores and all these different things, because the point at which we're doing a huge disservice to future generations is allowing the consolidation and the monopolies that are happening. And I know I'm going on a rant, but it's like that all starts with personal responsibility and our accountability at an individual level, because now I can point and say, hey, look, that's a big problem. That's a big problem. I can't do anything about it. But there's certain things that we can do. It's like, it's going to be expensive, but I'm going to buy it from a local farmer. It may be a little bit more, but I'm going to eat less. Maybe I eat less processed crap because of it. There's still the ability to vote with your dollar in so many different ways.
I like that you talked about diversity in the way that it is actually beneficial. It's diversity in capability and in capacity and skill set, not diversity in immutable characteristics. And I think culture today is like, well, if we have white people and black people and brown people and everything else, then we're diverse. Well, sure. You have a lot of people that look different, but that's not strength. That means nothing. Or their sexual orientation or where they were born. That literally means nothing. What means something is, and this is where personal responsibility comes in, is I may not be able to take on the global supply chain, but what I'm really good at doing is having this platform that brings a voice to maybe farmers who would not otherwise have a voice. And that's the skill set I bring. And maybe somebody else, I've got a neighbor who ran a trucking logistics company, was very, very successful. So you bring that guy in to handle the logistics of distribution. And then you have a farmer who's been doing it fourth generation and knows how to maximize every square inch of his land for maximum production. You bring that guy in. That's true diversity. That's where it's actually useful, not these immutable characteristics that we get hung up on.
Yeah, nature is a great example for that. And again, using agriculture and everything as an example, biodiversity and ecosystems is so important to resilience. You look at monocrops. There's so many different instances where you can find forests, like whole forests that are monocrops for harvesting, be it eucalyptus or whatever. And you take and you sample the biodiversity in there. There's nowhere near as many different species of birds and everything else. Whereas you get some areas, you have a bunch of different types of grasses. You have different types of trees. You get different types of animals, be it herbivores, and then you get your predators coming in, and then that builds up the soil. There's so many different ways. And then one of the reasons why I went down the path of the warrior's garden, given the analogy of the brain being very much like soil. Whereas like a healthy soil, there's a saying in regenerative agriculture, it's not how much rain you get, it's how much you keep. And how you get healthy soil is through that biodiversity. There's regenerative, agricultural practices like no-till and stuff like that. But the key is you build up a healthy ecosystem. So whenever it does rain, the water penetrates the soil, it goes into the aquifers and everything, versus, a monocrop application where you're doing conventional tillage. Maybe you don't have a cover crop in the winter. It builds a crust up, and so that whenever it does rain, that water sheds into the waterways instead of going down into the aquifers, and it just creates a system of needing exterior inputs on a constant basis, be it fertilizer, irrigation, and all these other different things which have downstream impacts. Our mind is very similar in so many different ways as an analogy, in that your inputs do equal outputs. And if you're constantly in this negativity bias tendency or whatever, it's like you're going to find that your lived state is going to be less fulfilling in so many different ways, and you're losing your most valuable resource, which is time.
Well, less fulfilling and less productive for yourself and for other people. Richard, this is awesome, man.
Absolutely.
This has been a great conversation. Let the guys know where to pick up a copy of the book and to follow along with what you've got going on. Obviously, we talked about a lot today, and some things I didn't expect to talk about, but that's why I like podcasting, because we can have real conversations that ultimately lead to growth and abundance.
Yeah, I mean, you can go to warriorsgarden.com and you can find out more about it there. I'm on social media. And granted, I'm not as consistent with it as I used to be and everything, but I'll probably start doing more stuff here on YouTube soon. And I'll give you links to that if you want.
Yeah, well, we'll sync everything up in the show notes and let guys know where to go. Man, I was glad we could have this conversation and glad we could make it work. I dropped the ball a couple of times, admittedly, but I'm glad you hung with me.
Dude, don't sweat it. I appreciate you having me on. I really appreciate this. Thank you so much.
Brother, I appreciate you, man. Let's stay in touch. Thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely.